Autumn 3333 BCE. The coastal plains near Issus shimmer under the early morning sun. The air is thick with dust, kicked up by thousands of marching feet. The rhythmic thud of Macedonian soldiers echoing off the distant foothills. Alexander of Macedon rides at the head of his phalanx, his crimson cloak billowing like fire in the crisp breeze. Every man in sight knows that today, the fate of empires will be decided not by negotiation, but by steel and skill. The salty tang of the Mediterranean drifts inland, mingling with the earthy scent of sweat and horseflesh. Macedonian cavalry snort and paw at the soil, restless, aware that the Persian army lies just beyond the hills. Scouts return with tense faces, pointing toward the horizon where the glint of bronze and the flutter of distant banners suggest the enemy is preparing. Alexander narrows his eyes, sunlight catching the edge of his helmet, reflecting a warrior's resolve. Behind him, the infantry moves in perfect rhythm. Spears sway like a field of reeds, the bronze tips gleaming ominously in the rising sun. Shield-bearers grunt under the weight of their hoplons, muscles straining as they adjust their formation to the narrow corridors of the coastal plain. The clink of armor, the hiss of sand against leather boots, the muted commands of officers, it all merges into a tense symphony. Alexander rides closer to the scouts. "Tell me what you see," he commands, voice steady but sharp. "They are massing on the plain, my king," one scout replies, eyes wide. Archers, thousands of them. Their quivers bristle like porcupines, and they have positioned men on the ridges every hill, every approach, ready to rain death upon us. Alexander listens, feeling the weight of history pressing down. A flicker of anticipation crosses his face, a warrior who thrives in the storm of battle. He scans the horizon. Persian banners ripple in the wind, their colors unfamiliar yet commanding, the vast host seemingly endless. In that moment, the Macedonian phalanx is a single heartbeat, waiting, breath held in anticipation of the storm that is about to descend. The wind shifts, carrying the faint whistle of arrows slicing through the air from unseen distances. Horses rear nervously, and the soldiers instinctively tighten their grip on spear and shield. The first harbinger of the Persian threat has arrived, invisible yet palpable. Alexander turns to his generals, eyes alight. "Today, we do not merely march," he says. "We write the story that the world will remember." Dust swirls across the plain as the sun climbs higher. You can almost hear the pulse of history, the collective heartbeat of thousands of warriors, each step a prelude to chaos. The Macedonian army presses forward, the ground trembling beneath their advance, their shadows stretching long across the pale earth. In the distance, the Persian host awaits, disciplined and deadly, quivers full, bows taut, ready to unleash a storm of poisoned arrows upon the advancing phalanx. The sun rises higher over the coastal plains, casting long shadows from the rows of Persian warriors. King Darius III surveys his army from a raised dais, his purple robes rippling in the warm breeze. Around him, thousands of archers kneel and string their bows with quiet precision. Each movement measured, practiced, lethal. Quivers bulge with arrows, many tipped with poison, a silent promise of death. Drums beat a low, ominous rhythm across the plain, synchronized with the soldiers' steady movements. Officers shout commands in Persian, their voices sharp and authoritative, echoing against the hills. Archers exchange glances, nodding as if acknowledging a sacred pact today. Their skill would be the spear that pierced the heart of Macedon. Scouts rush in from the ridges, bringing news of the approaching phalanx. Darius does not flinch. Instead, his eyes narrow, calculating. "Hold your fire," he commands, voice carrying over the din. "Let them come closer. Let them believe they are masters of this ground. Then, let our arrows speak." From the edges of the camp, banners flutter, adorned with golden symbols of Persian power. cavalry trot silently along the flanks, their hooves barely making a sound on the dry soil, while chariots creak ominously in the rear, poised to charge. Every element of the Persian host is in place a living weapon, a tide ready to crash. The archers adjust their stances, flexing fingers over the bowstrings. Poisoned tips glint in the sun, sharp and menacing. The air hums with tension, each breath a silent warning. A young archer, barely more than a boy, tightens his grip, feeling the weight of history on his shoulders. He looks to his comrades, eyes wide with both fear and pride. Today, he whispers to himself, "We strike as one." Above the plain, the wind carries a faint whistle, a harbinger of the deadly storm to come. Darius watches the distant specks of Macedonian soldiers advancing, calculating their speed, anticipating their formations. He senses the fear in the approaching ranks, the uncertainty in their steps, and a faint smile crosses his lips. The battle has already begun in their minds, though not yet in the clash of steel. Around him, commanders move like shadows, inspecting lines, checking positions, ensuring every arrow, every soldier is prepared. The ground itself seems to vibrate under the collective pulse of the Persian army, a living testament to discipline honed over centuries. And somewhere among the ranks, the quivers are filled, the bows are drawn taut, and the poison storm waits patiently for the signal that will unleash it upon the advancing Macedonians. The Macedonian scouts crested a low ridge, their eyes widening at the sight before them. The Persian archers, arranged in perfect rows, glinted bronze and wood beneath the morning sun. Quivers bristled with poisoned arrows, and the soldiers' taut bows seemed to hum with anticipation. Dust swirled across the plain as the first hint of wind carried a whispering, deadly warning. The Macedonians had entered the lion's den. A sudden twang, the sound of a bowstring releasing, split the morning air. An arrow thudded into a shield mere feet from the scouts, and another whistled past, grazing a horse. Panic rippled through the small reconnaissance party. Soldiers shouted, raising shields, pivoting to create barriers against the invisible hail. The metallic thud of arrows striking bronze and wood was deafening, punctuated by the cries of the wounded. Alexander, atop his horse, observed from a distance, a hawk's gaze sweeping across the chaos. His eyes narrowed, taking in the sight of Macedonian men ducking and weaving, the air thick with tension and the faint scent of fear. He felt the pulse of the coming battle surge in the earth beneath him, each heartbeat echoing the march of thousands. A young cavalryman turned to Alexander, voice trembling. "My king, their arrows, they burn the flesh. Poison, I think. We cannot hold them like this." Alexander's face remained stoic, jaw set, eyes burning with the fire of command. "Hold the line," he said, his voice calm but cutting through the panic like a blade. "They aim to frighten. Fear is their weapon. Steel is ours." The scouts fell back, weaving through their own lines, warning the phalanx of what lay ahead. Spears rose and shields locked, forming a barrier against the first deadly wave of the Persian storm. Dust and sand churned with every movement, arrows cutting through the air like a swarm of deadly locusts. The Macedonians adjusted formations, shields overlapping, armor clanging with each impact. Some soldiers fell to poisoned shafts, writhing as medics tried desperately to bind wounds. The air was filled with a metallic tang of blood and the acrid scent of fear, thick as fog. The Macedonian phalanx pressed forward cautiously, step by careful step, their disciplined ranks holding against the first taste of Persian strategy. Alexander watched, unblinking, feeling the rhythm of the battle in every movement. He knew the full storm had yet to descend, but already the deadly precision of the Persian archers had impressed itself upon his men. The Macedonians were tested, their courage sharpened by the whistling hail of poisoned arrows. And at that moment, the young king understood the true skill of Darius's army, coordinated, relentless, and merciless. The Macedonian phalanx had barely caught its breath when the Persian storm truly descended. Thousands of arrows darkened the sky, falling like a black rain across the plain. The whistling of poison shafts filled the air, each one a harbinger of death. Horses reared, shields splintered, and men cried out as the first volleys struck. The coordinated precision of the Persian archers was breathtaking and terrifying. Alexander's men pressed their shields together, forming an almost impenetrable wall of bronze and disciplined will. Yet, the sheer volume of arrows tested their endurance. Arrows thudded into shields and helmets, some piercing the gaps, striking flesh and sinew, and releasing the subtle, deadly toxins that would sap strength and life. The metallic clash of bronze met wood, punctuated by the groans of the wounded, created a symphony of chaos. From his vantage point, Alexander's eyes swept the battlefield, noting the patterns of the Persian fire. Each wave of arrows seemed almost alive, shifting to target weak points, probing the Macedonian formation. He gritted his teeth, voice low but resolute. "Hold the line! Step steady! Forward!" His command carried across the ranks like a lifeline, a thread of order amidst the storm. The soldiers moved as one. Spearmen adjusted their grip, bracing against the impact of each volley, their boots sliding in the churned earth. Cavalry moved carefully along the flanks, horses snorting, ears pinned back, dodging the falling death that seemed to reign without mercy. Alexander himself rode along the lines, a pillar of calm in the maelstrom, offering nods, sharp commands, and silent reassurance that steadied the hearts of men. In the distance, the Persian archers seemed endless. Darius III watched from his dais, calm and calculating, a conductor of this deadly orchestra. Every arrow loosed was designed to slow, wound, and terrorize, and already the Macedonians felt the sting of fear pressing against their discipline. The poisoned arrows were subtle in their effect. At first a soldier falters, then another, the strength in his limbs failing, the mind clouding with nausea and pain. Amidst the chaos, small acts of heroism punctuated the storm. Shield bearers risked life and limb to protect fallen comrades. Medics dashed across the open plain to drag men to relative safety, and soldiers gritted teeth and pressed forward, step by laborious step. Dust and smoke mixed with the metallic scent of blood, rising like a fog that swallowed both the living and the fallen. And yet, the phalanx did not break. The Macedonian men, drilled in unyielding discipline, adapted in real-time. Shields raised higher, formations shifted subtly, and the thunder of boots and clash of armor met the Persian storm with quiet defiance. The first volley had been a warning. The full force of the Persian archers was meant to shatter morale, but instead it forged resolve, and Alexander's gaze burned brighter, his mind already calculating the moves that would turn the tide. The Macedonian line wavered under the relentless storm of arrows, but Alexander remained a calm center in the chaos. His horse's hooves struck the churned earth with rhythmic determination as he rode along the front, voice carrying over the din. "Form the wedge! Shields high! Follow my lead!" His commands were precise, slicing through the confusion like a blade. Soldiers adjusted instantly, pivoting to create a spear point formation at the center of the phalanx. The wedge, bristling with bronze, began to push forward, a living, battering ram of discipline and resolve. Alexander's eyes scanned the Persian ranks, noting the subtle gaps between archers and their slower-moving infantry behind. He saw the rhythm of their volleys, the brief pause between strings drawn and released, and in that pause, he saw opportunity. Cavalry units fanned out on the flanks, weaving through arrows with astonishing precision. The horses snorted and reared, trained to endure the chaos, their riders leaning low, spear tips ready. Archers among Alexander's men returned fire sparingly, aiming for Persian officers to disrupt coordination. The battlefield was a storm of bronze, wood, and blood. Yet Alexander moved as if above it, orchestrating each maneuver with calm authority. The poisoned arrows continued to fall. But now, the Macedonian phalanx absorbed and adapted. Shield bearers interlocked arms, creating a moving fortress that allowed infantry to advance in concert. Men shouted encouragement, their voices blending into a chorus of courage that rose above the whistling death. Alexander himself engaged in the thick of it, rallying a faltering group, pushing forward where hesitation might have meant ruin. Around him, small pockets of heroism unfolded, a soldier dragging a comrade free from the line of fire, another pressing forward despite a poisoned wound, others hurling javelins to thin the Persian ranks. Every movement was amplified by the presence of their king, who rode along the lines like a living emblem of resolve. The arrows were deadly, but Macedonian steel and discipline began to shape the battlefield, forcing the Persian volleys to adjust, slow, and falter. Alexander's voice cut through again. Press! Strike where they are weakest. The ground favors us if we take it. His eyes locked on the Persian center, where the banners of Darius fluttered like distant flames. He could see the tension in the Persian ranks, the subtle hesitation as they sensed the Macedonians' adaptation. The battle was not yet won, but the tide had begun to shift, and the storm of arrows, formidable, deadly, precise, was meeting resistance it had not anticipated. Every step forward was a statement of intent. Every shield raised a testament to courage. Every cry from the Macedonian men a refusal to yield. Alexander's tactical genius was not merely in brute force, but in understanding rhythm, timing, and human resolve. And as the sun climbed higher, casting long shadows across the plain, the king's countermaneuvers began to carve the first cracks in the Persian defense, a promise that the storm would not last forever. The plain of Issus quivered under the clash of bronze and the rain of poisoned arrows, but Alexander's gaze remained fixed on the heart of the Persian army. He saw what others could not, a subtle misalignment in the Persian ranks, a gap in the center where Darius's elite guards shifted too far forward, leaving a vulnerable corridor. His mind raced, calculating, and his lips tightened in a thin line of resolve. "Prepare the charge!" he shouted, voice carrying across the dust-choked battlefield. Cavalrymen tightened grips on reins, spears leveled, and horses pawed the earth in anticipation. Foot soldiers pressed forward in unison, forming the wedge that would spear through the Persian center. The rhythmic thrum of thousands of boots and hooves created a pulse in the plain, a living heartbeat that synchronized with Alexander's own. Arrows continued to hiss through the air, some finding their mark, others embedding harmlessly into shields. The Macedonians pressed on, the wedge slicing through terrain and resistance alike. Soldiers shouted, men and horses straining against the weight of armor and fear, their cries blending into a chorus of human determination. Alexander rode at the tip of the wedge, his sword raised, cape flaring behind him like a banner of fire. Darius watched from his elevated position, tension darkening his expression. The Persian line trembled as the Macedonian wedge tore through its center, archers scattering in confusion, poisoned arrows faltering as coordination broke. Cavalry clashed in brutal up-close combat, the clash of bronze and the neighing of horses forming a cacophony of war. Smoke and dust mingled, obscuring vision, yet Alexander's men advanced with deadly precision. Amidst the chaos, small acts of heroism punctuated the mayhem. A young Macedonian soldier leapt atop a fleeing chariot, plunging his spear through its wheel to stop it cold. Another shield-bearer caught a falling comrade just as a poisoned arrow struck, dragging him back into formation. The battlefield was a storm, yet amid it, human courage burned brighter than any fear. Alexander pressed on, eyes fixed on the banners of Darius. Each step forward forced the Persian king's troops to respond, pulling them apart, unraveling the cohesion that had been their strength. The wedge widened gaps, flanking movement struck weak points, and slowly, inexorably, the tide of battle began to shift. The Macedonians, tested by poisoned hail and relentless arrows, now carved a path through their foes, their unity and discipline turning the Persian storm against itself. And there, in the heart of the chaos, Alexander's presence was like a beacon, unwavering, fearless, a living embodiment of strategy and courage. The arrows had been formidable, but the Macedonian spirit, led by a king who seemed almost superhuman, was proving stronger. The turning point had arrived, and the Persian ranks could feel it in every faltering step and scattered volley. History itself seemed to hold its breath. The battlefield at Issus lay in chaos, dust and smoke curling into the sky like the breath of the dead. Macedonian phalanxes pressed forward relentlessly, shields locked, spears leveled, as the Persian center splintered under the calculated strike of Alexander's wedge. Amidst the turmoil, Darius III's eyes darted across the plain, disbelief and fear mingling in their depths. His elite guards had faltered. The gaps he had ignored now yawned like open graves before him. With a sharp command, Darius mounted his horse and turned toward the rear. The golden banners of Persia flapped frantically, the soldiers' disciplined coordination dissolving into panic. Cavalrymen scattered, chariots careened uncontrollably, and the once imposing archers could no longer maintain their deadly volleys. The sound of armor clashing gave way to the thunder of fleeing hooves, screams, and the harsh cries of wounded men. Alexander rode at the forefront, spear in hand, scanning the chaos. He could see the human cost: comrades struck by poisoned arrows, horses writhing in pain, banners trampled underfoot. Yet, amidst the carnage, a sense of grim triumph surged through him and his men. The Macedonians pressed forward, turning the Persian disarray into a relentless pursuit. Each step forward was a statement. Victory demanded resolve, and now it was theirs to seize. The young archer who had whispered courage to himself earlier lay pinned under a fallen shield, eyes wide, chest heaving. Around him, survivors dragged the wounded, trying desperately to restore order where none could exist. The scent of blood, dust, and sweat hung thick in the air, mingling with the faint, acrid smoke of fires sparked by the chaos. The plain, moments ago alive with deadly precision, now seemed haunted, echoing with the sounds of flight and despair. Darius fled toward the northern hills, his regal composure shattered, leaving behind the remnants of an army that had once appeared invincible. From atop a ridge, Alexander watched the Persian king disappear into the distance. A hush fell over his troops for a brief heartbeat, not for fear, but for the weight of witnessing history unfold. Victory was theirs, but it was a costly testament to courage, discipline, and unyielding will. As Alexander slowly rode through the battlefield, the Macedonian soldiers tended to their fallen, binding wounds, offering water and murmuring prayers for the dead. The arrows had been poisoned, yes, but the spirit of the Phalanx had endured. The Macedonian army, tested and tempered by the lethal skill of the Persian archers, had survived the storm. And in the quiet aftermath, beneath the smoke and dust of Issus, a young king contemplated the price of conquest, the fragility of life, and the unyielding march of destiny. The sun dipped low over the blood-soaked plains of Issus, painting the dust and smoke in hues of crimson and gold. Macedonian soldiers moved slowly among the fallen, their boots sinking into churned earth slick with mud and blood. The moans of the wounded mingled with the distant cries of birds returning to roost, a stark contrast to the storm that had raged only hours before. The battlefield was a tapestry of human courage and suffering, each figure frozen in a moment of history's relentless advance. Alexander rode quietly at the center, surveying the aftermath. His crimson cloak, once vibrant, was dulled with dust. His armor bore scratches from close calls, and his sword was slick with the residue of battle. Yet his eyes remained sharp, absorbing every detail: the disciplined resilience of his men, the scattered Persian forces retreating into the northern hills, the banners that now lay trampled and torn across the plain. Every shadow told a story, every groan a testament to the deadly skill of the Persian archers. He dismounted and walked among his soldiers, speaking in low tones, offering words of encouragement and sorrow. "You have endured," he said, voice steady yet heavy with emotion. The storm was fierce, but we held together. Remember those who could not follow us home. Their courage is the foundation of what we build today. Soldiers nodded, some with tears streaking faces smeared with dust and blood. The poisoned arrows had claimed many, yet the living carried the weight of both grief and pride. In the distance, the ruins of Persian formations glimmered under the dying light. Quivers lay scattered, bows bent and broken, banners fluttered weakly, and the ground was littered with discarded helmets and shields. The Macedonians understood, in that moment, the deadly brilliance of the Persian army. Their archers had been unmatched, their volleys precise and merciless. But Alexander's leadership, discipline, and courage had turned the tide, leaving an indelible mark on history. As night fell, a hush settled across the plain. Fires flickered in the distance, casting long shadows over the fallen, and the wind carried the faint smell of smoke, blood, and the sea. Alexander stood silently, staring at the horizon where the Persian king had vanished. He understood the magnitude of the victory. Yes, it was a triumph of strategy and courage, but it was also a reminder of the fragility of life, the chaos of war, and the immense cost of ambition. Issus would be remembered not just for the arrows that rained like a deadly storm, but for the men who endured them, for the discipline of the Phalanx, and for the young king who saw opportunity where others saw only peril. Alexander's campaign would march onward, but the lessons of this day, the skill of Persian archers, the resilience of Macedonian steel, the human stories written in blood and courage would echo through time, a testament to both the horrors and the glory of war.